Hello, I'm Robert. Welcome to my channel, and I help you by sharing both positive things going on in the world and helping scare people with fact-checking things. And this is about a really positive thing, news from Israel. And I know this graph may seem a little bit complicated to start with. This is the R naught, which you may have heard of. And when this number is above 1, in the case that they are increasing, and when it's below 1, then they're decreasing. And when they go above 1, that means your pandemic is getting more and more out of control. And as we can see here, this is the second wave in Israel. And as the wave continued, to start off with, it was in control, case per day going down. But then it went over, it started getting worse and worse, more and more out of control. And then, with the second wave, a similar thing was happening, but then it had only just gone just above 1, just starting to increase and get more and more out of control. And then the vaccine comes in, and look where it's gone, all the way down to 0.62. Lower even it was at the start of the second wave. And this means that any outbreaks there, once the R naught is at 0.62, this means that whenever you have an outbreak, it very quickly disappears and gets more and more in control. And this is clearly using the vaccine. It's pretty certain that this reason is because of the vaccine. And those are very fast elimination levels of reduction now. And as this one people are following on Twitter saying this is exciting stuff. Obviously no other countries at a similar point in their vaccination programs, but it is a glimpse of the future. It's got a fully open economy, so they're not in lockdown. And 40 days after exiting lockdown, and this is compared with the second wave after exiting the October lockdown. That's what happened. And after exiting this one, then it's going down like that with a fully open economy. This is for 2 doses of Pfizer, and Pfizer is 94% effective against B.1.1.7. That's the one first identified in the United Kingdom, even for asymptomatic cases. Now, so this means that if they keep vaccinating everyone, then they're eventually going to eliminate it from Israel. It can't spread anymore once the R naught is below 6, below 1. So if you can keep it below 1, even with an open economy, then that means they're going to eliminate it. Now, remember that 20% of the world population is already like this without a vaccine. And that is very unusual. No country has ever eliminated flu even with the vaccine. So it's very unusual for flu, but it is, of course, something that has been done with SARS and with MERS and with measles and other serious diseases. But this means that public health, none of those have been stopped with public health measures either. It's very unusual to be able to completely eliminate the disease with public health measures. And this means public health measures are very effective against COVID if you do them properly. So now we have 2 totally different ways of stopping this vaccine. So now we can look at this. And this is the best COVID response if you have a very good public health measures, like in Australia did, and like New Zealand, Taiwan, Vietnam and China. They all had an excellent public health response. And they stopped the virus without a vaccine. If you then look at, say, the Israeli response, where they had to go into lockdown. So you can stop it with a very good armour, you can stop it without a lockdown. That's what Taiwan did, for instance. They never had a lockdown. To do that, you have to go in very fast, and with the testing, test very quickly, you have to trace very quickly, you have to isolate and quarantine rigorously. And then you really don't need to do much else if you do those. and then you've got the public physical distancing and the mask wearing, and then you've got the lockdown as an emergency last thing. It shouldn't really be necessary if you're doing other stuff. You can do it, stop it pretty much with test, trace, isolate if you do that properly, like New Zealand does. New Zealand is constantly stopping the mini outbreaks, mainly with test, trace, isolate, and doing the isolation properly. So in New Zealand, when if you get COVID-19 in New Zealand, you will, and you're a native, you're not someone visiting New Zealand, then you will be given free accommodation in a hotel and everything done for you. And that is the way to do it. And then a proper hotel away from your family. Because if you got COVID, I mean, if you had Ebola, you wouldn't want to stay at home with Ebola, would you? If you had SARS, you definitely wouldn't want to stay at home with SARS. It's only because of an analogy with flu and people not being having previous experience with a more deadly respiratory disease like SARS. It's the only reason that the rest of us are doing this quarantining at home with COVID. It doesn't really make much logical sense. If you can get away from your household, then do it. Because the unusual thing also about COVID is that if you are a contact, then you are almost certain not to have got it yet if they do the tracing quickly. Very unlike flu. And if you are a case, even then, if they isolate you as soon as you have symptoms, then you may be isolated before your first super spreader event in your house, which is the main way it spreads. So you can stop it very effectively with test, trace, isolate if you do it properly. So that's this. Now, this is what Israel obviously has. They obviously haven't succeeded in that. The United Kingdom hasn't either. So the holes there, like my analogy there, the eyes are like the just gaps that you haven't even tried to plug. Like if you don't even have test, trace, isolate, then you have a huge gaps in your armour there. And then this is like where it's rather, it's just not really working properly. Your armour isn't really working properly. You're doing test, trace, isolate, but most people aren't testing or aren't isolating. And that's like a great big hole in your armour. So the vaccine is able to plug these gaps in the armour, and that's the main thing that the vaccine does. So if you think about it like that, a country that, if you take for instance Australia, they don't have many gaps in their armour, they just imported cases. They strategic, and for instance New Zealand is doing that. New Zealand's only gaps really, they're like that, their only gaps are the borders. So New Zealand, unlike almost most of the other countries, they are vaccinating their border workers. No, they don't need to vaccinate their health workers. They don't need to vaccinate the general public, don't need to vaccinate their elderly. The only people they need to vaccinate are the people who are, for instance, looking after the hotels with the tourists and the people who are visiting, with the people who are visiting New Zealand, where they're quarantining. Those are the top priority to vaccinate in New Zealand. So they have, because they've got a very good health response, they don't need to vaccinate anyone else as a priority. And then they could then vaccinate, if there's an outbreak, they could vaccinate everyone, they get them into the hotels anyway. But that's their top priority, that's who they're vaccinating in New Zealand. It makes sense for them. So this shows that you can eliminate this in two different ways. Indeed, probably more than two ways. There's test, trace, isolate. There's also surge testing, which is yet another way. If you've got vast amount of testing capability and you've got a small hotspot, say the city of Leicester, and then you surge test everyone in the city of Leicester. United Kingdom is trying this approach. You've tried it. Then you just test everyone and test them frequently, then isolate if they're cases. And that's another way. It's an alternative to test, trace, isolate. It's surge testing. So we have multiple ways of stopping this. And the other thing is that Pfizer is just a first generation vaccine. And this is about the 2p tweak, that's how Pfizer was so effective. And then there's the Hexapro tweak, which if that works, then Pfizer, and it's being tested at the moment, then if the hexapro tweak works, then Pfizer will become much more effective. It will lead to when the messenger RNA gets into a cell to make 10 times as many spikes that look like the right thing if it's got the hexapro tweak. And it'll also be capable of being stored in fridges instead of ultra-cold chains. So we only have a first generation vaccine at the moment. It's already this effective. And then so long as we act very quickly and keep the variants down, then we can use vaccines that vaccine against multiple variants at once, just like they do for flu. So we've got to keep on doing everything. That's basically that. So this is quite a short little video, just explaining that things are going so well in Israel, and if we do adding the vaccine on top of the test rates, isolating the physical distancing and quarantining and isolating properly, and we should be able to eliminate it. And there's a big gap in we'll just say the big gap in Israel because they haven't vaccinated the Palestinians on the West Bank, and for not to vaccinate Palestinians is like a great big hole. That's like a hole in their armour, because the Palestinians have COVID much more than the Israelis. So it's going to be very difficult for the Israelis to completely eliminate it for as long as they have unvaccinated Palestinians. But if Palestinians are gradually vaccinating, and I think the Israelis are vaccinating some of the Palestinians that work for Israeli companies. But really, it's not sensible at all for Israelis not to vaccinate the Palestinians. They should vaccinate them as top priority. In the case of China has, like I said, with New Zealand, its top priority is to vaccinate its border workers. China's top priority, because it's a vaccine manufacturing hub in the world, then China's top priority is to vaccinate other countries, because they no longer have any significant risk in China. Their problem is cases coming in from other countries. So if they can help the rest of the world to vaccinate faster, then China reduces its own risk. It makes much more sense than vaccinating Chinese who have pretty much zero risk of getting it anyway. And most of the people in China they trust the Chinese vaccine because that's just the way they are in China, but they don't see the point in it because they have no risk of getting COVID because they've eliminated it. And so anyway, I expect we're going to eliminate COVID very quickly in the so long as we keep up with the vaccination and increase the vaccine very fast. I've just done a separate video about that, so I'll put the link on this article. Well, the article is still up here. I'm not sure what you can see. Yes, you can see it properly, and it's funny. It's number one on there in Science 2.0. You probably find it in Google News if you check for it, because my article, I don't know why that's popped up. My articles are in Science 2.0, and they quickly go into Google News. So I'm hoping to get some awareness of how we can rapidly increase vaccination by technology transfer. Anyway, I'll put a link to that in the video description as well. If we can manage to rapidly increase vaccination, we can stop this pandemic very fast. Anyway, back to this exciting news, and meanwhile, continue to do it all. I'm going to talk, right, that's it. I'm rambling a bit now. So, yes, just a reminder, do like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and reminder of our Facebook group, Don't Stay Debunked, where there are many of us there now fact-checking the stories that scare you and helping people who are scared in other ways. Just we don't do therapy. That's obviously many people in the group do have therapy for getting scared for some of the fake doomsday news on these absolutely terrify some people. Anyway, many of our members are autistic, about a quarter probably of the ones who get scared. So we have these rules. And it's very important to stick to the rules. So they're pretty straightforward things. But if you are going to join the group, just please have a look at the rules at the head of the group. We get people who don't follow the rules from time to time, and if we do that, then it runs very well and smoothly. And it's totally rule-based moderation. We with a certain level of discretion, but it's always according to rules. And so you should feel at home there. We are autistic friendly, we are bipolar friendly. We try to be there for it, even if you have a manic depressive in your manic phase, then we do our best to respond in that situation too. And so we are also very much welcome people who are good at helping scared people, even and fact checkers. And then also if you're scared, then you're very welcome in our group for our help there as best we can. Whatever we can to help you.